The attorney's voice cuts through the silent room. Should my granddaughter's spouse be found to have violated the sanctity of their marriage through infidelity, they are entitled to exactly $1. Jamie's face drains of color. Ivy shifts in a red dress beside him, suddenly very interested in her phone. Evelyn doesn't move, doesn't blink, just watches her husband realize what's happening. Oliver Montgomery adjusts his reading glasses. Furthermore, this estate will pursue legal action against said spouse and any third parties who knowingly participated in alienation of affection. Jamie stands. This is... Two men in suits step forward from the back corners of the room. Not security. Process servers. Mr. Montgomery, please sit down, Oliver says. We're not finished. 3 weeks earlier, Evelyn had stood in the same library. Different circumstances. Her grandmother's body barely cold upstairs, surrounded by hospice nurses who'd come too late to do anything but confirm what Evelyn already knew. She'd held Catherine Montgomery's hand through the final hours, listened to her labored breathing turn shallow, then stop. The woman who'd raised her, who'd been more mother than grandmother after Evelyn's parents died in a car accident when she was 9, was gone. Jamie had been in the Bahamas, with Ivy, posted stories from the beach while his wife's grandmother was dying. He'd sent a text. Sorry, babe, can't get a flight back in time. You understand. She'd understood perfectly. Now, 3 weeks later, every chair in Catherine's library is filled. The Montgomery family estate sprawls across 15 acres in Connecticut. Old money. Here's the kind that doesn't announce itself, but everyone knows is there. The library smells like leather and old books and her grandmother's lavender perfume that still clings to the curtains. Jamie sits in the front row, Ivy beside him in that red dress, too bright, too tight, too young for a will reading. But Jamie had insisted she come. Called her his partner in the family group chat last night, said she deserved to be there for such an important family moment. Evelyn's aunts exchange glances. Her Uncle Richard clears his throat. Her cousin Margaret won't look at Jamie. They all know, have known for months. But in families like the Montgomerys, you don't make scenes. You wait, you watch, you let rope accumulate until there's enough to hang someone with. Oliver Montgomery, no relation. He, despite the shared name, stands at the head of the long mahogany table. He's been the family attorney for 40 years. Watched Evelyn grow up, held her grandmother's power of attorney in those final months when Catherine's mind stayed sharp, but her body failed. Thank you all for coming, Oliver begins. His voice is steady, professional. He's done this before, dozens of times, but Evelyn catches something in his eyes when he glances at her. Not pity, recognition, like he's about to watch a play they've both rehearsed, because they have. The reading starts with the usual, small bequest to staff. Margaret gets the Cape Cod summer house. Uncle Richard inherits Catherine's stock portfolio. Various cousins receive antiques, jewelry, specific items cataloged with care. Jamie's leg bounces. He keeps checking his watch. Bored. Like this is an inconvenience. Like his wife's grandmother's death is just an obstacle between him and whatever he thinks he's getting. Ivy touches his knee, whispers something. He smiles. Evelyn's stomach turns, not from grief. She processed that already, in private, in the proper way. This feeling is colder, sharper. Now we come to the primary estate, Oliver says. He removes his reading glasses, polishes them, puts them back on, a practiced pause. Catherine Montgomery's remaining assets, including this property, the Manhattan penthouse, investment accounts, and various holdings, are valued at approximately $42 million. The room shifts. Everyone sits straighter. Jamie stops bouncing his leg. These assets, Oliver continues, reading directly from the will now, are left in their entirety to my granddaughter, Evelyn Catherine Montgomery. Jamie relaxes. Of course, Evelyn gets it, which means he gets half in the divorce he's been planning, the divorce his lawyer already drafted paperwork for, the divorce he thinks will make him rich. Evelyn watches him calculate, watches greed smooth out the tension in his shoulders. However, Oliver says, that one word drops like a stone. Catherine Montgomery included several stipulations. Oliver flips to a new page. His voice doesn't change, same professional tone, But something in the room does. The air gets thinner. First, these assets are placed in an irrevocable trust with Evelyn as the sole beneficiary. They cannot be divided in divorce proceedings, as they are not marital property under Connecticut law. Jamie's jaw tightens. Please don't interrupt, Uncle Richard says quietly. Not a request, Oliver continues. Second, regarding Evelyn's spouse, James Montgomery. He looks up, makes direct eye contact with Jamie. Should said spouse be found to have violated the sanctity of their marriage through infidelity, documented by evidence satisfactory to the trust executor, that would be me. He is entitled to exactly $1 as his share of this inheritance. Silence. Ivy's face goes pale beneath her foundation. Jamie stands halfway like he's going to leave. But Oliver's assistant, a woman Evelyn doesn't recognize, moves to stand near the door, not blocking it, just present. There's more, Oliver says. Catherine Montgomery also established a separate litigation fund of $2 million. Designated specifically for pursuing legal claims against James Montgomery and any third parties found to have knowingly participated in alienation of affection during the marriage. Alienation of affection? Jamie's voice cracks. That's not even legal in Connecticut? Oliver's expression doesn't change. Actually, while Connecticut abolished the tort, the estate can pursue claims in other jurisdictions where Mr. Montgomery's behavior occurred. Hawaii, for instance, still recognizes alienation of affection claims, as does North Carolina, where I believe you and Ms. Sullivan spent a weekend last spring. Ivy makes a small sound, tries to cover it with a cough. Margaret smiles behind her hand. Furthermore, Oliver says, pulling out another document, Catherine Montgomery left a personal letter to be read at this time. He unfolds a single sheet of paper. Evelyn recognizes her grandmother's handwriting, still strong, even in those final weeks. My dear Evelyn, Oliver reads, if you're hearing this, then James has proven himself to be exactly what I suspected. I'm sorry I won't be there to see his face, but I trust Oliver to do justice to the moment. Someone in the back, one of the cousins, laughs, quickly stifled. I've spent the last 6 months ensuring that every asset you might inherit is protected from his greed. I've also spent considerable money documenting his behavior, private investigators, financial audits, legal consultations. Consider it my final gift to you, the freedom to divorce him without losing anything except dead weight. Evelyn's throat tightens. Even in death, her grandmother was protecting her. The litigation fund is optional, Oliver continues reading. You don't have to pursue it, but if you choose to, you have my blessing and my resources. Make him understand that Montgomery women are not to be trifled with. All my love, Grandmother Catherine. Oliver folds the letter carefully, sets it in front of Evelyn. Jamie is standing now, fully, his face red. This is insane. You can't. Actually, I can, Evelyn says. Her voice surprises her, steady, clear, louder than she expected. Everyone turns to look at her. Grandmother knew about Ivy 6 months ago, Evelyn continues. I told her, showed her the texts I found on your phone, the credit card statements for hotels, the Instagram posts you thought you deleted. Jamie's mouth opens, closes. She asked me what I wanted to do, Evelyn says. I told her I wanted to wait until she was gone, because I couldn't handle a divorce while she was dying, so she made arrangements. Oliver pulls out another folder. These arrangements include a complete financial separation that was executed 2 months ago, transferring all marital assets acquired during the marriage into your name alone, Mrs. Montgomery. Mr. Montgomery signed the papers himself. I signed a refinance, Jamie says, but his voice wavers, like he's remembering, like he's starting to realize. You signed multiple documents, Oliver corrects. The refinance was one. The others were transfers of property, retirement accounts, and investment holdings. Your attorney should have read them more carefully. Ivy stands. I'm leaving. Ms. Sullivan. Oliver's voice stops her. Before you go, I should inform you that you're named as a defendant in the pending alienation of affection suit. You'll be served within the next 10 days. I didn't do anything illegal, Ivy says. Her voice is shaking. You pursued a married man, accepted expensive gifts purchased with marital funds, and actively encouraged the dissolution of his marriage while posting about it publicly on social media. Oliver slides a document across the table. We have screenshots, testimony from mutual acquaintances, and several witnesses who heard you refer to Mrs. Montgomery as the obstacle. Ivy looks at Jamie. He won't meet her eyes. The men in the back of the room, Oliver says calmly, are process servers. They'll be serving you both as soon as we conclude. I'd appreciate it if you'd accept service peacefully. The room is silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Evelyn stands. I think we're done here. Evie, Jamie starts. It's Evelyn, she says. It's always been Evelyn. Only my family calls me Evie, and you're not family anymore. The process servers moved forward as the family filed out. Evelyn didn't stay to watch, didn't need to see Jamie's face as he accepted the papers that would destroy whatever future he'd imagined with Ivy's Instagram followers cheering them on. Margaret caught up with her in the hallway. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. Grandmother did all the work, Evelyn said. Her hands were shaking now that it was over, adrenaline draining away, leaving her hollow. No, Margaret squeezed her arm. You did the work. Well, you stayed quiet for 6 months while he paraded that girl around. You held Aunt Catherine's hand while he was in the Bahamas. You earned this. Uncle Richard appeared with a glass of water. Drink. You look pale. She drank. The water helped, grounded her back in her body. Through the library doors, she could hear Jamie's voice rising, angry, defensive. Then Ivy's, higher, panicked, the exact pitch of someone realizing they'd miscalculated badly. Oliver emerged, closing the doors behind him. They've been served. Mr. Montgomery is requesting to speak with you. No, Evelyn said. I told him you'd say that. Oliver's expression softened. You did well in there. Catherine would be proud. She shouldn't have had to protect me from my own husband. No, Oliver agreed, but she did anyway. Because that's what family does. The next few days blurred together. Evelyn moved through the estate like a ghost, sorting through her grandmother's belongings. Every room held memories. The sunroom where Catherine taught her to play piano, the garden where they'd planted roses together, the kitchen where they'd made Christmas cookies every year, just the two of them, continuing the tradition even after Evelyn got married. Jamie called 47 times the first day, then stopped. His lawyer called instead. Professional, apologetic, clearly hadn't known about the inheritance situation until after the will reading. My client wishes to discuss the terms of the separation, the lawyer said. There are no terms to discuss, Evelyn replied. The separation is final. The assets are protected. He gets $1, as stipulated in the will. Mrs. Montgomery, surely we can reach some kind of agreement. We reached an agreement when he said his vows. He broke it. We're done. She hung up. Margaret stayed at the estate with her, helped pack up Catherine's clothes for donation, sat with her during the long evenings when the house felt too big and too empty. What are you going to do with all this? Margaret asked one night. They were in the library boxing up books. Catherine had requested her collection go to the local university, establishing a scholarship fund in her name. I don't know, Evelyn admitted. Keep the estate, probably. Sell the penthouse. Grandmother left instructions for most of it. I meant, what are you going to do with your life? Evelyn stopped packing, sat back on her heels. I'm 30 years old and I'm getting divorced. Now, I have no idea. You're 30 years old and you're free, Margaret corrected. You have a graduate degree in art history, $42 million, and no one to answer to. The world is open. The thought was terrifying, exhilarating, both at once. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Ivy. We need to talk. Evelyn deleted it. Another text seconds later. Please. I didn't know he was lying about everything. Margaret read over her shoulder. Don't respond. I'm not going to. But the texts kept coming. He told me you guys had an open marriage, that you didn't care. I never would have. She's lying, Margaret said flatly. She posted a selfie in your bed. I saw it before she deleted it. She knew exactly what she was doing. Evelyn blocked the number. That weekend, Oliver called. We need to discuss the litigation. They met at his office in Manhattan. The firm occupied 3 floors of a building overlooking Central Park. Old money again, the kind of law firm that had represented Montgomery's for generations. Oliver's conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows. The autumn light made everything look golden, warm, deceptive. "I've compiled the evidence," Oliver said, spreading documents across the table. "Text messages, financial records, witness statements. Ms. Sullivan posted extensively about the affair on social media before she made her account private. We have screenshots." Evelyn looked at the photos. Jamie and Ivy in Hawaii, in the Bahamas. At restaurants Evelyn recognized, places she'd suggested for date nights that Jamie claimed were too expensive. "The alienation of affection claim is strong," Oliver continued, "particularly in North Carolina, where they spent that weekend. Ms. Sullivan can be shown to have actively pursued your husband with full knowledge of his marital status." "What would we win?" Evelyn asked. "Monetarily? Hard to say. She has minimal assets, perhaps $50,000, which would likely bankrupt her. The real victory would be the judgment itself, a legal record of her actions." Evelyn studied a photo of Ivy and Jamie on a beach. They looked happy, in love, like people who believed they were building something real. "What does she do for work?" Evelyn asked. "She's an influencer, lifestyle content. She quit her job at your husband's firm to do it full time. According to her social media, she was banking on becoming Mrs. Montgomery. So if we sue her, we destroy her career, her reputation, her financial stability." "Yes," Oliver said simply. Evelyn was quiet for a long time. The city moved below them, people rushing to appointments, to lunch meetings, to lives that continued regardless of personal disasters. "What would grandmother want?" she finally asked. Oliver smiled. "Catherine left me instructions for this conversation. She said, and I quote, 'Let Evelyn choose. If she wants blood, support her. If she wants peace, support that too. The money is there either way.' What do you think I should do?" "I think," Oliver said carefully, "that Ivy Sullivan is 24 years old and made a terrible choice. And I think your husband is 35 and made a calculated series of choices over many months. I think there's a difference." Evelyn nodded slowly. "We sue Jamie, not Ivy. You can't sue him for alienation of affection. He's the spouse. Then we sue him for something else, fraud. He signed those documents without reading them, benefited from my family's money throughout our marriage, and attempted to claim assets he had no legal right to. There has to be something." Oliver's smile widened. "There absolutely is. Give me a week." Evelyn returned to Connecticut. The estate felt different now, less like a museum of memories, more like a home she could grow into. She started running in the mornings, something she hadn't done since before the wedding, when Jamie complained that she always smelled like sweat afterward. She ran through the property, past the gardens, through the woods that bordered the back acres. On one of these runs, she encountered a man fixing a section of fence near the property line. Tall, dark hair, work clothes covered in dirt. He looked up as she approached. "Morning," he said. "Morning?" She slowed to a walk, catching her breath. "Are you the new groundskeeper?" "Temporary. Thomas Chen. Your uncle hired me to handle some maintenance while the estate transitions." "Evelyn Montgomery." She offered her hand. His handshake was firm, calloused, real. "I know who you are. I'm sorry about your grandmother. Mrs. Montgomery was kind to my family." "You knew her?" "My mother worked here years ago, kitchen staff. Mrs. Montgomery paid for my college when my mom got sick." He gestured at the fence. "Figured I owed her family some honest work." Evelyn felt something shift in her chest, her grandmother's kindness echoing forward. "You didn't owe us anything." "Maybe not, but I wanted to help." He returned to the fence, testing the posts. "This section's pretty rotted. I'll need to replace about 20 feet. Do whatever needs doing." She hesitated. "Thank you for being here." He nodded, went back to work. She continued her run, but her mind stayed on Thomas Chen, on the quiet way he'd spoken about her grandmother, on the fact that Catherine's kindness had rippled out in ways Evelyn was only beginning to understand. That evening, she called Oliver. "I want to establish a scholarship fund, something more than just the books." "What did you have in mind?" "Full ride, 4 years, for students whose families work in service industries. It's preference to first-generation college students." She paused. "And I want to name it after my grandmother." "Catherine would love that." "I know." 2 weeks later, Oliver called with news. We're filing suit against James Montgomery for fraudulent misrepresentation and breach of fiduciary duty. He claimed to be investing marital funds in joint ventures that would benefit you both. In reality, he was funneling money into personal accounts and using it to finance the affair. How much? Approximately $300,000 over 2 years. Evelyn's breath caught. 300. He was careful. Small amounts. Regular transfers that looked like business expenses. But we tracked them. Hotel rooms. Jewelry for Ms. Sullivan. A car lease in her name that he's been paying. Vacation rentals. It adds up. When do we file? Tomorrow. The press will likely pick it up. Are you prepared for that? She thought about it. About her name in articles, about Jamie's colleagues reading about his fraud, about Ivy's followers learning the truth. Yes, she said, I'm ready. The story broke on a Wednesday morning. Connecticut heir sues estranged husband for fraud in marriage. The article included photos, Jamie in his expensive suits, Ivy from her Instagram, and one of Evelyn leaving Oliver's office, looking composed in a navy dress her grandmother had bought her years ago. Her phone exploded. Texts from college friends she hadn't heard from in years, calls from reporters, 3 voicemails from Jamie's mother, each more desperate than the last. She turned her phone off, went for a run. Thomas was working near the rose garden when she passed. He looked up, nodded once. Didn't ask questions. She appreciated that more than he could know. When she got back, Margaret was in the kitchen making coffee. It's everywhere. Twitter's having a field day. Apparently Ivy's losing followers by the thousands. I didn't do this to hurt her. I know, but you can't control what happens when the truth comes out. Margaret poured 2 cups. Jamie's issued a statement, says you're a vindictive woman who can't accept that he fell in love with someone else. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Of course he did. Oliver already responded, released the financial records. Now the narrative's shifting to millionaire fraudster instead of romantic following his heart. The next few weeks were a blur of depositions and legal meetings. Jamie's lawyer tried to settle. Offered to repay $100,000 if Evelyn would drop the suit and sign an NDA. No, she told Oliver, he'll keep fighting. Let him. The case moved forward. Discovery revealed more than Evelyn had known. Jamie had been planning to divorce her for over a year. Had been systematically moving money, setting up accounts, building a case for why he deserved half of everything despite the prenuptial agreement they'd signed. What he hadn't counted on was Catherine Montgomery's awareness, her resources, her willingness to protect her granddaughter with every legal tool available. In late autumn, Evelyn was in the library sorting through more of her grandmother's papers when she found a journal. Recent entries dated from the last year of Catherine's life. September. Evelyn came for lunch today. She smiled the whole time. None but her eyes were sad. Something's wrong in her marriage. I can feel it. October. Confirmed my suspicions. James Montgomery is having an affair. I've hired an investigator. Evelyn doesn't know yet. I won't tell her until I have enough evidence to protect her. December. Evelyn knows. She told me everything. I've never seen her cry like that. I wanted to kill him myself. Instead, I'm changing my will. Money can't fix a broken heart, but it can ensure she never has to beg for what's hers. January. Met with Oliver today. Everything's in place. If I die before this ends, Evelyn will be protected. The Montgomery name means something. Loyalty, honor. James forgot that. He'll remember. Evelyn sat on the floor, holding the journal, crying for the first time since the funeral. Not from grief, from gratitude. Her grandmother had seen her pain and responded with fierce, practical love. Thomas knocked on the library door. Mrs. Montgomery? Sorry to interrupt. There's someone at the gate. Says she needs to talk to you. Evelyn wiped her face. Who? Ivy Sullivan. Every instinct said to refuse, to send her away. But something, curiosity maybe, or the memory of her grandmother's measured justice, made her pause. Let her in. Ivy looked smaller in person, younger. She'd dressed carefully, jeans, a simple sweater, minimal makeup, trying to look respectable, unthreatening. They sat in the sunroom. Evelyn didn't offer coffee. Thank you for seeing me, Ivy began, her hands twisted in her lap. I know you don't owe me anything. I don't. I wanted to apologize. Evelyn waited. I told myself stories, Ivy continued. Her voice was shaking. That you didn't care. That your marriage was already over. That I wasn't doing anything wrong because he came to me, not the other way around. She looked up, met Evelyn's eyes. Those were lies. I knew what I was doing. I just didn't care because I wanted what you had. My husband? Your life. Ivy's laugh was bitter. The money, the status, the respect. I grew up in a trailer park in Nevada. I've been trying to escape that my whole life. Jamie seemed like the answer. He wasn't. No, Ivy's eyes were red. He told me you were controlling, cold, that you married him for his connections and then ignored him. I believed it because I wanted to. Evelyn studied her. This woman who'd slept in her bed, worn jewelry bought with her family's money, posed for photos in places Evelyn had wanted to visit with her husband. Why are you telling me this? Evelyn asked. Because you're suing him, and because I want you to know that everything in those financial records is true. The money he said he was investing, he spent it on me. The business trips? We were together. Every lie he told you, I was there. I knew. Ivy pulled out her phone. I have texts, voicemails, videos of him talking about how he was going to leave you as soon as your grandmother died. I'll give them all to your lawyer if you want them. Why would you do that? Because he's already moved on. Ivy's voice cracked. There's someone new, a paralegal from his lawyer's office, 22 years old. I saw them together last week. When I confronted him, he said I was crazy, that I should be grateful he gave me a taste of the good life. Evelyn felt a strange sort of vindication. The not happiness. Jamie's cruelty gave her no joy, but confirmation that she'd been right about who he was. I destroyed my life for him, Ivy said. Lost my job, my apartment, my credibility. My followers hate me now. My family won't talk to me. And he just moved on, like I never mattered. You didn't, Evelyn said quietly. Neither did I. We were both just resources to him. Ivy nodded, wiped her eyes. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that if testifying helps your case, I'll do it. After Ivy left, Evelyn sat in the sunroom for a long time. The sun was setting, painting the garden gold and amber. Her grandmother's roses were preparing for winter, stems bare, waiting for spring. She called Oliver. Ivy Sullivan came to see me. I heard. Should I be concerned? No, she wants to help. She has evidence, texts, recordings, says she'll testify if we need her. Oliver was quiet for a moment. That changes things. With her testimony, we can prove systematic fraud. The case becomes much stronger. Use it, Evelyn said, all of it. Are you sure? This will destroy him. He destroyed himself. I'm just holding up the mirror. The deposition was scheduled for early November. Jamie arrived with his lawyer, looking thinner than Evelyn remembered. Older. The affair had aged him, or maybe it was the reality of consequences catching up. They sat across from each other in Oliver's conference room, the same room where they'd reviewed the evidence weeks ago. Now Jamie was seeing it for the first time, every text, every receipt, every lie documented in clinical detail. His lawyer tried to object, to claim privacy violations, but Oliver had been thorough. Everything was legal, obtained through proper channels, undeniable. Mr. Montgomery, Oliver began, can you explain these transfers? $20,000 to an account in Miss Sullivan's name. $35,000 to a joint travel account you opened without your wife's knowledge. $15,000 to a jewelry store in Manhattan. Jamie's jaw worked. Those were gifts. Gifts purchased with marital funds. I earned that money. Actually, Oliver said, sliding another document forward, your salary was $45,000 less than the amounts you spent. The difference came from joint accounts funded by your wife's family trust. Money you claimed was being invested. I was going to pay it back. When? After the divorce. When you expected to receive half of everything? Jamie's lawyer put a hand on his arm, whispered something. Jamie shook him off. She had everything, Jamie said. His voice was rising. The money, the name, the respect. What did I have? I was just the guy she married, Catherine's charity case. So you stole from her, Oliver said flatly. I took what I was owed. You were owed nothing. You signed a prenuptial agreement clearly stating that family assets remained separate property. That agreement was made under duress. You had independent counsel review it. You negotiated terms. You signed willingly. Oliver leaned forward. Mr. Montgomery, you committed fraud. You lied to your wife, misappropriated funds, and violated the trust of your marriage. Now you're facing the consequences. The deposition lasted 4 hours. By the end, when Jamie's lawyer was advising him to settle, to repay everything and accept whatever terms Evelyn offered, Jamie refused. He wants his day in court, Oliver told Evelyn afterward. He thinks he can win sympathy, play the victim. Let him try, Evelyn said. The trial was set for early December. The weeks leading up to it, Evelyn threw herself into work on the estate. The scholarship fund was taking shape. She'd partnered with 3 universities, established selection criteria, hired an administrator. The first recipients would be chosen in the spring. Thomas was still working on the property. What had started as temporary maintenance had expanded into a full restoration of the gardens. He knew plants the way some people knew music, intuitively, with a deep understanding that went beyond textbooks. One afternoon, Evelyn found him in the greenhouse, repotting orchids her grandmother had collected over decades. "These are incredible," he said, not looking up. "Some of them are 30 years old. Your grandmother kept detailed records of their care." Evelyn picked up one of the journals. Catherine's handwriting filled every page. Dates, temperatures, blooming cycles, a lifetime of patient attention. She loved things that required care, Evelyn said. She was good at it. Thomas set down a pot, finally meeting her eyes. "I heard about the trial. Next week, right?" "Monday. How are you feeling?" The question surprised her. Most people asked what she thought would happen, or offered opinions about Jamie, or expressed outrage on her behalf. No one had asked how she actually felt. "Tired," she admitted. "Ready for it to be over. That makes sense?" They worked in silence for a while. Thomas repotting, Evelyn organizing supplies. It was comfortable, easy. She realized she'd spent very little of her marriage feeling comfortable. "Can I ask you something?" Thomas said eventually. "Sure." "Why didn't you just take the settlement, get the money back and move on?" Evelyn considered the question. "Because he needs to hear it, in court, in public, that what he did was wrong. If I settle, he gets to tell himself some story about how I was vindictive or unreasonable. This way, a judge decides." Thomas nodded slowly. "My mom used to say that some people only learn through consequences, that mercy without accountability isn't mercy at all." "Your mom sounds wise." "She was." He returned to his work. "She died 2 years ago. Cancer. By the time we caught it, there wasn't much to do except make her comfortable." "I'm sorry." "Me too." He placed another orchid in fresh soil, gentle despite his work-roughened hands. "But she got to see me graduate. Got to know her work here mattered. Your grandmother made sure she had good insurance, paid time off, dignity. That meant everything." Evelyn's throat tightened. More ripples she hadn't known about. More proof that her grandmother's kindness had been deliberate and far-reaching. That weekend, Margaret came to help her prepare for trial. They picked out clothes, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth. A simple gray suit, pearl earrings Catherine had given her. "You look like old money that doesn't need to prove anything," Margaret said approvingly. "Perfect." Sunday night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She walked the estate in the dark, past the greenhouse, through the gardens to the fence line where Thomas had been working. The new posts stood straight and strong, built to last. The trial started at 9 Monday morning. The courthouse was an old building in downtown Hartford, all marble and wood paneling and the weight of accumulated judgment. Jamie was already there when she arrived. He'd lost weight. His suit hung slightly wrong, like he'd bought it when he was heavier. Ivy sat 3 rows back, arms crossed, watching him with an expression Evelyn couldn't quite read. The proceedings began. Oliver laid out the case methodically. Every transfer, every lie, every expenditure documented with receipts and bank statements. Jamie's lawyer tried to paint him as a man in love, someone who'd made mistakes but didn't deserve to be destroyed. "My client acknowledges that the relationship with Miss Sullivan was inappropriate," the lawyer said. "He's deeply sorry for the pain he caused, but the financial transfers weren't fraud. They were the actions of a man trying to find happiness." "Happiness purchased with stolen money," Oliver countered. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, looked unimpressed. Evelyn testified first, walked through the marriage, the gradual distance, finding the texts, confronting Jamie, who denied everything until she showed him screenshots. He told me I was paranoid, she said, that I was seeing problems that didn't exist, that if I loved him, I'd trust him. How did that make you feel? Oliver asked. Like I was going crazy, like I couldn't trust my own judgment. Jamie's lawyer objected. Relevance? Your Honor, Oliver said, this speaks to Mr. Montgomery's pattern of deception. He didn't just steal money. He systematically undermined his wife's reality to continue the theft. The judge allowed it. Jamie testified next. He was defensive, angry, kept insisting he'd been trapped in a loveless marriage and that Evelyn had emotionally abandoned him. So you committed fraud? The judge asked. I took what I needed to survive. From joint accounts your wife's family funded. She never would have given it to me willingly. Because it wasn't yours to take. Jamie's face reddened. Everything in that family is about the Montgomery name. I was never good enough, never wealthy enough, never connected enough. I spent 5 years being looked down on. I earned that money just by putting up with them. The courtroom went silent. Oliver didn't even need to respond. Jamie had just admitted everything. The judge called a recess. Evelyn went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face. When she looked in the mirror, she saw her grandmother's cheekbones, her mother's eyes. Montgomery women who'd faced their own trials and survived. Ivy was waiting in the hallway when Evelyn emerged. He's going to lose, Ivy said quietly. Yes. Good. Ivy's voice was flat, hard. I want you to know I'm testifying tomorrow. Everything I told your lawyer, every lie he told me about you, every plan he made to take your money, all of it. Why are you doing this? Because he used both of us and because... Ivy hesitated. Because your grandmother helped my cousin, years ago. She was working as a housekeeper at the estate, got pregnant, and Mrs. Montgomery paid for her to finish nursing school. She's a charge nurse now. Has a good life, she met Evelyn's eyes. I didn't know that until after everything happened. Didn't know your family actually helped people instead of just existing above everyone else. Grandmother believed in investing in people. Jamie believed in taking from them. Ivy's jaw tightened. Tomorrow, I'm making sure everyone knows exactly who he is. Ivy testified the next morning. She was nervous, voice shaking, hands gripping the witness stand. But her testimony was devastating. She described how Jamie had pursued her, told her his marriage was essentially over and that Evelyn was cold and controlling, how he'd promised her a life of luxury once the divorce was finalized and he got his share of the Montgomery fortune. Did he tell you he'd signed a prenuptial agreement? Oliver asked. No, he said it was invalid, that he had lawyers working on it. Did he tell you he was using marital funds to pay for your relationship? He said it was his money, his salary, that he'd earned it and could spend it however he wanted. Did you believe him? Ivy looked at Jamie. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Yes, I believed everything he told me. I was stupid. You were lied to, Oliver corrected, by a man who made lying a habit. Jamie's lawyer tried to discredit her, called her a scorned woman seeking revenge. But the text she'd provided backed up every claim. Jamie's own words, preserved digitally. Once grandmother dies and I get half, we're set. 3 weeks later, the old woman can't last much longer. Then it's our time. The jury looked disgusted. The trial lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, the judge delivered her verdict. Mr. Montgomery, she said, you committed systematic fraud against your wife. You misappropriated funds, violated the terms of your marriage, and showed a calculated disregard for the truth. This court finds you liable for $300,000 in damages, plus legal fees and punitive damages of an additional $200,000. Jamie's face went white. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court is referring this case to the state attorney for potential criminal charges of theft and fraud. You may face additional penalties. Your Honor, Jamie's lawyer started. I'm not finished. The judge's voice was ice. Mr. Montgomery, you stood in this courtroom and admitted you felt entitled to steal from your wife because her family looked down on you. Let me be clear. They had reason to. You proved yourself to be exactly what they suspected, a man of poor character who valued money over integrity. Jamie stood. Sit down. The judge didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. You'll have your chance to appeal. But I suggest you spend the time reflecting on how you destroyed your marriage, your reputation, and your future for an affair that lasted less than a year. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Evelyn felt Margaret grab her hand. Oliver was smiling, a rare, genuine expression. Around them, the courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations. Jamie pushed past his lawyer, headed for the exit. Ivy watched him go, her expression unreadable. Outside, the reporters were waiting, cameras, microphones. Questions shouted from every direction. Oliver handled it, gave a brief statement about justice being served, thanked the court for their attention to the case. Evelyn said nothing, just walked to the car, Margaret beside her, and let herself finally breathe. The week after the verdict, Evelyn stayed at the estate, didn't read the articles, didn't check social media, didn't answer calls from anyone except Margaret and Oliver. The world outside was celebrating her victory. Twitter threads dissecting Jamie's entitlement, think pieces about men who marry for money. Her story had become a symbol, proof that rich men couldn't always buy their way out of consequences. But Evelyn felt hollow. She'd won. $500,000 awarded, plus legal fees. Jamie's reputation destroyed. Criminal charges pending. Everything she'd fought for. So why did she feel so empty? Thomas found her in the greenhouse on a Thursday afternoon. She was sitting on the floor surrounded by her grandmother's journals, not reading them, just holding them. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know." He sat down beside her, didn't crowd her, just present. "I thought I'd feel different," Evelyn said, vindicated, satisfied, something. "But I just feel tired." "That makes sense. You've been fighting for months." "It's more than that." She set down a journal. "I won the case, but I still lost 5 years of my life to someone who never loved me. I can't get those back. The money doesn't change that." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "My mom said something when she was dying. She said grief isn't just for death, it's for all the things we lose. All the futures that don't happen. I'm not grieving Jamie. No, you're grieving the person you thought he was, the marriage you thought you had. That's real loss, even if he doesn't deserve your sadness." Evelyn looked at him. Really looked. Saw the understanding in his eyes. Someone who knew what it meant to lose something you couldn't get back. "How do you move forward?" she asked. "Slowly. Some days better than others." He picked up one of Catherine's journals. "But do you find things worth caring about? People worth trusting? You build something new?" "I don't know how to do that." "Yeah, you do. You're already doing it." He gestured at the greenhouse, the scholarship fund, restoring this place, taking care of what your grandmother built. That's moving forward. She wanted to believe him. He wanted to feel like the trial had closed a chapter instead of just ending a sentence. That night, alone in her grandmother's house, Evelyn finally let herself cry. Not dignified tears, full-body sobs that left her gasping, for the marriage that never existed, for the trust she'd given someone who didn't deserve it, for the woman she'd been at 25, so sure she'd found partnership, before learning it was all performance. She cried until she was empty, until there was nothing left except exhaustion, and the faint hope that maybe, eventually, this would stop hurting. The next morning, Oliver called. "The state attorney is moving forward with criminal charges, fraud, theft, forgery. Jamie could face 2 to 5 years. Will he? Depends on whether he pleads out. His lawyers already reached out about a deal." Evelyn was surprised by her own reaction. She didn't care. The civil case had given her what she needed, acknowledgement that she'd been wronged, validation of her reality, justice in a tangible form. What happened to Jamie beyond that wasn't her concern anymore. "Whatever the state decides," she said, "I'm done." "Are you sure? You could provide a victim impact statement." "I'm sure. He's not my problem anymore." She hung up. Felt lighter than she had in days. Margaret showed up that afternoon with takeout and wine. They ate in the kitchen, Catherine's kitchen, with its old farmhouse sink and copper pots hanging from hooks, the heart of the house. "So what now?" Margaret asked. "What do you mean?" "The trial's over. Jamie's facing charges. The estate is yours." "What are you going to do with your life?" Evelyn had been avoiding that question. "I don't know. Finish my dissertation, maybe. I've been ignoring it for months." "Art history, right? What's your focus?" Women collectors in the 19th century, how they built private galleries and influenced public taste despite being excluded from official institutions. Margaret smiled. That sounds very Montgomery of you. Women finding power in spaces men didn't think to guard. I hadn't thought of it that way. Maybe you should. Margaret poured more wine. Your grandmother did that. Built her own power, made her own rules. You're doing the same thing. I'm just surviving. No, you're choosing. That's different. Margaret leaned forward. You could have taken the settlement, could have let Jamie off easy to avoid the publicity, could have hidden. Instead, you stood up in court and told the truth. That's not survival. That's courage. Evelyn didn't feel courageous. She felt scraped raw. But maybe that was what courage looked like after it had cost something. The weekend brought unexpected visitors. Ivy arrived Saturday morning, driving a beat-up Honda that had definitely seen better days. I'm leaving Connecticut, Ivy said when Evelyn opened the door. Going back to Nevada, starting over. Okay. I wanted to give you this before I left. Ivy held out an envelope. It's not much, $3,000. I know it doesn't come close to covering what he spent on me, but it's everything I have saved. I want you to have it. Evelyn looked at the envelope. I don't need your money. I know, but I need to give it to you. Please. There was something in Ivy's voice. Desperation, maybe, or the need for absolution. Evelyn understood that, took the envelope. Thank you. Ivy nodded, started to leave, stopped. Can I ask you something? Sure. How did you do it? Stand up there and just tell the truth without falling apart? Evelyn thought about it. I fell apart plenty, just not where anyone could see. I don't know how to do that, how to carry it all. You don't have to carry it alone. Evelyn surprised herself by meaning it. You made terrible choices, but you owned them. You testified. You faced it. That takes strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It never does at the time. Ivy left after that, drove away in her Honda back to whatever life she could build from the wreckage of her choices. Evelyn donated the $3,000 to the scholarship fund. It seemed right, using money from the affair to help someone build a better future. Sunday, Thomas invited her to see the garden restoration progress. He'd been working for weeks on the rose beds, preparing them for winter, ensuring they'd bloom again in spring. Your grandmother had over 40 varieties, he said, walking her through the garden. Some of them are rare, heirloom roses that aren't cultivated commercially anymore. She loved roses, said they were proof that beautiful things could have thorns and still be worth tending. She was right. Thomas stopped by a particularly stunning white rose. This one's called Madame Hardy. It's from 1832. The blooms are perfect, pure white, fully double, incredible fragrance. But the thorns are vicious. Evelyn touched a petal, soft, delicate, deceptive. How do you keep them alive through winter? Preparation, mulch, protection, and faith that they'll come back when the season changes. He looked at her. They always do. That's the thing about roses. They're tougher than they look. Something in his voice made her glance up. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. Warm, open, without agenda. Are we still talking about roses? She asked. Maybe not entirely. Her heart did something complicated. A flutter of possibility mixed with caution. It was too soon. She'd just escaped one marriage, wasn't ready for anything new. But Thomas wasn't asking for anything. Just standing beside her in the garden her grandmother had loved, talking about things that survived winter. I should get back to work, he said, stepping away, giving her space. But if you want to learn about the roses, I'm happy to teach you. Your grandmother left detailed notes. Seems like something worth passing on. I'd like that, he smiled, went back to the garden beds. Evelyn stayed a while longer, watching him work. The careful way he handled each plant, the attention he paid to details that most people wouldn't notice, the quiet competence that didn't need to announce itself. She wasn't ready for romance, might not be for a long time. But standing there in the autumn sun, watching someone tend her grandmother's roses with genuine care, Evelyn felt the smallest spark of hope. Not for love. Not yet. For the possibility that someday when she was ready, there might be men in the world who knew how to nurture instead of take. Who understood that beautiful things required patience and care, who saw strength in survival. For now, that was enough. Winter came to Connecticut with the kind of cold that made everything sharp and clear. Evelyn spent December finishing her dissertation. The library became her workspace, surrounded by her grandmother's books wrapped in an old cashmere throw, drinking tea from Catherine's favorite pot. The words came easier than she'd expected. Maybe because she finally understood her subject matter in a new way. These 19th century women who'd built galleries in their homes, who'd collected art when institutions wouldn't let them through the front door, who'd found power in spaces men overlooked, they weren't so different from her grandmother, from herself. Thomas worked outside, preparing the estate for spring. She'd watch him sometimes from the library windows, the methodical way he pruned branches, how he'd stop to examine a plant, consulting Catherine's journals before making decisions. He treated the work like it mattered, like these gardens were worth preserving. Oliver called with updates she no longer needed. Jamie had pled guilty to reduced charges. 18 months in minimum security, 3 years probation, mandatory repayment of the full amount plus interest. His lawyer tried to get him released on bail pending sentencing. The judge denied it. He'll serve his time starting in January, Oliver said. How do you feel about that? I don't, Evelyn said honestly. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. That's healthy. Is it? I thought I'd feel more. Something. Evelyn, you already did your grieving. The crying, the rage, it's the betrayal. You moved through all of it during the trial. Now you're on the other side. That's not indifference. That's healing. She wanted to believe him. Margaret came for Christmas. They cooked together in Catherine's kitchen, a honey-baked ham, sweet potato casserole, collard greens slow-cooked with smoked turkey, cornbread from Catherine's handwritten recipe, peach cobbler for dessert. The whole house smelled like memory and comfort. I invited Thomas to join us, Margaret said while checking the ham. Hope that's okay. Evelyn's hands stilled on the cornbread batter. You what? He's alone for the holidays. His mom's gone. No other family in the area. Seemed cruel to let him eat frozen dinners while we're having a feast. You could have asked me first. I could have, Margaret grinned. But then you would have overthought it and said no. She wasn't wrong. Thomas arrived at 6, holding a bottle of wine and looking uncomfortable in a button-down shirt instead of his usual work clothes. I brought this. Wasn't sure what goes with ham. Everything goes with ham, Margaret said, taking the bottle. Come in. Evelyn's been stress baking since this morning. I have not. You made 3 pies. Thomas smiled. 3 pies sounds like stress baking. They ate in the formal dining room, the table that seated 12 but felt cozy with just the 3 of them. Thomas asked about Evelyn's dissertation. She found herself explaining her research, the patterns she'd discovered in how women collectors operated. They couldn't join museums or galleries, she said, so they created alternative spaces, private salons, home galleries, places where they controlled access and curation. They made their exclusion into a source of power. Like your grandmother, Thomas said. She couldn't change the world that treated your mother badly after your father died, but she could create a protected space for you here. Evelyn blinked. She'd never made that connection. Yes, exactly like that. After dinner, they moved to the library. Margaret built a fire. Thomas examined Catherine's books with the same careful attention he gave her plants. She had good taste, he said, pulling out a first edition. This is worth a fortune. Everything in here is. I haven't cataloged it all yet. You should. For the scholarship, maybe. Some of these could be auctioned to fund more students. It was a good idea, practical. Catherine would have approved. Margaret left around 9, citing an early morning drive back to Boston. Evelyn suspected she was making an excuse to leave them alone, confirmed when Margaret hugged her goodbye and whispered, "Don't overthink it." Thomas stayed to help clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, Evelyn washing dishes, Thomas drying. The kitchen window showed darkness and a few scattered snowflakes beginning to fall. "Thank you for including me tonight," Thomas said. "I haven't had a real Christmas dinner since my mom died." "Thank you for all the work you've done here. The garden looks incredible. It's your grandmother's garden. I'm just maintaining it." "No, you're bringing it back to life. There's a difference." He set down the dish towel, turned to face her. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you doing okay?" "Really?" The question caught her off guard. Most people had stopped asking, assumed the trial victory meant she was fine. Some days are better than others, she said slowly. I don't miss Jamie, but I miss who I thought he was. I miss feeling like I understood my own life. That makes sense. Does it? Because sometimes I feel stupid for grieving something that was never real. It was real to you. That's what matters. Thomas leaned against the counter. When my mom died, people kept telling me to remember the good times. But what helped more was someone who said it was okay to be angry that she was gone, that I didn't have to perform gratitude for the time we had. I could just be sad. I'm not sad about Jamie. No, but you're sad about the 5 years, the future you planned, the trust you gave someone who didn't deserve it. That's real loss. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. I don't want to be sad anymore. Then don't be. Not tonight. He smiled. Want to see something? He led her to the greenhouse. Inside, warmed by space heaters and insulated glass, her grandmother's orchids were blooming. Dozens of them, white, purple, yellow, pink. The air smelled sweet, alive. How did you? Your grandmother's notes. She documented everything. I just followed her instructions. Thomas walked to a particularly stunning white orchid. This one bloomed yesterday, first time in 3 years according to her records. Evelyn touched the delicate petals. She would have loved this. I think she knew. That's why she wrote everything down, so whoever came after could keep them blooming. They stood there in the greenhouse, surrounded by flowers that had survived because someone had cared enough to leave instructions, because someone else had cared enough to follow them. I should go, Thomas said eventually. Let you get some rest. Thomas, he turned back, would you want to stay on after the winter work is done as permanent groundskeeper? Something shifted in his expression. Hope, maybe. Are you sure? I'm sure. This place needs someone who understands it, who cares about it the way my grandmother did. I'd like that. A lot. After he left, Evelyn sat in the greenhouse until midnight, listening to the heaters hum, watching snow fall outside the glass, feeling for the first time in months like maybe she was exactly where she needed to be. January brought the new semester. Evelyn defended her dissertation at Yale, a room full of professors who asked sharp questions and nodded at her answers. She passed. Dr. Evelyn Montgomery now. She, her grandmother, would have been proud. The scholarship fund announced its first recipients in February. 5 students, first-generation college students whose parents worked in service industries. One of them was the daughter of a woman who'd cleaned houses for Montgomery family friends for 20 years. Evelyn met them all at a reception, listened to their stories, saw their hope and determination, understood what her grandmother had known, that money's real power wasn't in having it, but in using it to change lives. By March, the legal saga was truly over. Jamie was serving his sentence. His lawyer sent a final letter requesting Evelyn's forgiveness for his peace of mind. She didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't something she owed him. It was something she gave herself by choosing to stop carrying his weight. Spring arrived slowly. Then all at once, the roses began to bud. The gardens came alive with color. Thomas was there every day, coaxing life from soil that had looked dead all winter. Evelyn found herself joining him more often, learning the names of plants, understanding the care they required, getting dirt under her fingernails for the first time in years. You're good at this, Thomas said one afternoon. They were planting new perennials in the shade garden. I'm just following instructions. No, you're paying attention, noticing what the plants need. That's different. She sat back on her heels, surveying their work. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who gardens. What kind of person did you think you'd be? I don't know. Someone who had life figured out by 30, who made the right choices and avoided mess. That sounds lonely. It does. Doesn't it? She smiled. I think I'm okay being messy now, making mistakes, not having everything figured out. Good. Because nobody actually has it figured out. Some people are just better at pretending. They worked until sunset, when the light turned golden and the garden smelled like earth and possibility. Thomas showed her how to deadhead roses properly. She taught him about the symbolism different flowers held in Victorian art. They found a rhythm that felt easy, natural. When they finally stopped for the day, covered in dirt, Evelyn realized she was happy. Not the performative happiness of her marriage, where she'd constantly monitored her own emotions to make sure she was grateful enough. Real happiness, the kind that existed without justification. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For being here. For caring about this place. For treating me like I'm not broken." Thomas's expression softened. "You're not broken. You're just healing. There's a difference." One Saturday in April, Evelyn hosted her first dinner party at the estate. Not a fundraiser or formal event, just dinner with friends. Margaret came, obviously. A few colleagues from her doctoral program, Oliver and his wife, Thomas. They ate on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The roses were in full bloom now, 40 varieties her grandmother had collected, each one thriving under Thomas's care. The air smelled like spring and the future. Margaret raised her glass. "To new beginnings." "To Catherine," Oliver added, who knew how to protect the people she loved. "To second chances," Thomas said quietly, his eyes meeting Evelyn's across the table. Evelyn lifted her glass. "To all of it." They drank, laughed, told stories. The evening stretched long and easy, the kind of gathering where no one wanted to leave. Later, after everyone had gone, Evelyn walked through the house. Her grandmother's house. Her house now. Every room held memories, but they didn't hurt anymore. They were just there, part of the foundation she was building her future on. She ended up in the library, where Catherine's journal still sat on the desk. Evelyn opened it to the last entry, dated 3 days before her grandmother died. "Evelyn will be fine, better than fine. She has the strength I always knew was there. The Montgomery name means something, not because of money, but because of character. Because we survive. Because we protect each other, because we know that real power isn't in taking, it's in giving. I won't be there to see her thrive. But I've done what I could. Built the protections, created the opportunities, left the instructions for how to tend the roses. The rest is up to her. And I know, I've always known, she's capable of more than she believes. Time to show herself what we've all seen. Watch over her if you can. And Evelyn, if you're reading this, I'm proud of you. I was always proud of you. Now, go live." Evelyn closed the journal carefully, ran her fingers over the worn leather cover. Her grandmother's final gift, not money or property or protection, but permission. Permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to build a life on her own terms. She would. 18 months later, Evelyn stood in the renovated carriage house behind the estate. What had once been storage was now gallery space. Clean white walls, track lighting, climate control. The first exhibition of the Montgomery collection opened that night, showcasing pieces her grandmother had quietly acquired over decades. The invitation list included art historians, collectors, and students from the scholarship program. Thomas had helped transform the garden path into an illuminated walkway. Margaret had handled publicity. Oliver had managed the legal details of establishing the collection as a public trust. But this was Evelyn's vision, her grandmother's legacy, made accessible. She was adjusting a painting when she heard footsteps behind her. "Nervous?" Thomas asked, terrified. He came to stand beside her. Over the past year, they'd grown closer, slowly, carefully, neither rushing toward anything, both content to let it develop naturally. He still lived in town, still maintained the gardens. But he was there most evenings, stayed for dinner, made her laugh, treated her with the kind of steadiness she was learning to trust. "You've done something remarkable here," he said. "We've done something remarkable. I couldn't have managed without you. I planted flowers and fixed broken things. You're the one who transformed loss into legacy." The guests began arriving at 6. Art students wandered through with wide eyes. Collectors examined pieces with professional interest. Scholarship recipients took photos, sharing their excitement on social media. Evelyn moved through the crowd, answering questions, accepting congratulations. She caught Margaret's eye across the room. Her cousin raised her glass in a private toast. Near the end of the evening, when most guests had left, Evelyn found herself alone in the gallery. Looking at the collection her grandmother had built, the space she'd created, the future she'd chosen. It wasn't the future she'd imagined at 25. That one had involved a different husband, a different life, a different version of herself who believed love meant sacrifice and silence. This future was better. built on truth and self-knowledge and the understanding that strength wasn't in enduring, but in choosing what you would and wouldn't carry. Thomas appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. Thought you might need this. What are we celebrating? You. This. Everything you built from something broken. She took the glass. It's not just me. You helped. Margaret, Oliver, even Ivy in a strange way. Maybe. But you're the one who decided to build instead of hide. That was your choice. They clinked glasses, drank. What happens now? Thomas asked. I don't know. Keep running the collection, expand the scholarship program, maybe teach. She looked at him. See what develops. He smiled. I like that plan. They stood there in the gallery, surrounded by art and possibility, as evening turned to night. The estate's windows glowed warm in the darkness. The gardens waited for spring. The roses would bloom again, tended by someone who understood that beautiful things required patience and care. Evelyn had learned that lesson, lived it, and now she was ready for whatever came next, not because she had everything figured out, but because she'd learned to trust herself enough to face uncertainty with confidence. The Montgomery name meant something. Her grandmother had taught her that, not because of money or status or social position, but because of how they treated people, how they used power, how they turned pain into purpose. That legacy was worth preserving, worth building on, worth passing forward to the next generation of women who needed to know that survival wasn't enough. You could thrive too. As they locked up the gallery and walked back to the main house, Thomas's hand found hers. She let it, felt the warmth, the steadiness, the possibility of something good growing from the ashes of something that had needed to burn. Not a fairy tale ending, something better, something real, a beginning.